Good afternoon, homing deadlines. My name is Samuel Perra, and today we'll be presenting my opinion for this term. I'm going to talk about the first and second conditional in English. Uh, the conditionals are very useful because they allow you to talk of possibilities, future situations, similar situations, and their possible results. In this presentation, I'm going to explain what conditionals are, how the first and second conditionals work, and the main difference between them. Let's go. Uh, what are conditionals? First, what are conditionals? Conditionals are sentence structures that describes a result that depends on a condition. Every conditional sentence has two main parts. The first part is it cause. They gives us the condition or situation. For example, if it rains. The second part is the result part, cause. This tells us what happened because of the condition. For example, I'll stay home. So the complete sentence is if it rains, I'll stay home. The important thing is that the result depends on the condition. Conditionals can be used for situations that are very possible, but they can also be used for imaginary or unlikely situations. Now, the first conditional. Let's talk about that. The first conditional is used for real or possible situations in the future. The situation is not guaranteed to happen, but it's realistic and could happen. The structure is if plus present simple plus will or want plus the infinitive. For example, if you study hard, you will pass the exam. In this sentence, studying hard is a realistic condition, and passing the exam is the possible result. We use the first conditional for things like plans, promise, warnings, and predictions about the future. So the main idea is real possibility in the future, real possibility in the future. Now, the first conditional in practice. The first conditional is a very flexible. We can change the order of the tasks without changing the meaning. For example, if I have time, I'll write my essay tonight, or I'll write my essay tonight if I have time. But sentences mean the same thing. There's one small punctuation difference. When the if clause comes first, we use comma. When it comes second, we normally don't use a comma. Use a comma. We can also use other modal verbs instead of will. For example, we can make for a less certain possibility. If it rains, we may cancel. We can use for ability or permission. If you finish, you can leave. We can we can we can use the should for advice. If you feel sick, you should rest. And we can use must for obligations. If you're late, you must apologize. Now, first conditional shortcuts. There are also other ways to express conditions. One important word is unless. Unless can replace if not. For example, unless you work hard, you won't pass. This has the same meaning as if you don't work hard, you won't pass. We can also use time expressions such as soon, as when, until, before, and after. For example, as soon as you get the results, call me. Or I want to leave until you arrive. These expressions are important because they make our English sound more natural and fluent. The main grammar rule is still similar. We use present simple after the connector, even when we are talking about the future. Now let's go with the second conditional. Mm, The second conditional is different from the first conditional. we use for hypothetical, imaginary, or unlikely situation in the present or future. The structure is if plus past simple plus will or will want plus the infinitive. For example, if I won the lottery, I will travel the world. Winning the lottery is possible, but it's unlikely. So we use the second conditional. We often use the second conditional to talk about dreams, wishes, imaginary situations, or to give advice. We can also use could or might instead of will. For example, if I had more time, I could help you. So the main idea of the second conditional is imaginary or unlikely situations. Now move to second conditional advanced use. There's an important role with the second conditional, the expression if I were you. In normal English, we use were instead of was after if, even with I. For example, if I were you, I wouldn't do it. This is a very common structure when we want to give advice. We can also say, if she were her, she would know. Another interesting thing about the second conditional is that it can have an inverted meaning. For example, if you work hard, you will pass. This can imply that the person probably doesn't work hard. Another example is, if I had $1 million, I will buy a house. This implies that I don't have $1 million. So the second conditional can be used for not only for imaginary situations, but also for giving advice or making gentle critics. Now the final contrast. To finish, let's compare the first and second conditional. The first conditional is for real and possible situation. Its structure is if plus present will plus infinitive. For example, if I study, I will pass the exam. The second conditional is for imaginary or unlikely situations. Its structure is if plus past will plus infinitive. For example, if I had one more time, I would travel. So the easiest way to solve with them then is to ask yourself one question. Will this realistic happen? If the answer is yes, we use the first conditional. If the answer is no, or the situation is imaginary or very unlikely, we use second conditional. Thanks, guys, so coming to watch this presentation and have a good day. Bye bye.